Well, there you have another episode of Straight Outta Combat Radio, audio medicine by Green Zone Hero. Today's guest I met 2 years ago at the Military Influencer Conference in Dallas, Texas. I saw him again last year in Orlando at the same conference. His name is Mr. Andrew Nelson. He was a member of the 82nd Airborne, and he's got an amazing, some amazing wisdom on transition, doing some great things in law now since he got out. I appreciate you listening to Straight Outta Combat Radio. I think you're going to enjoy this interview. Thank you.
You're a steely-eyed killer shadow in the night. You were born to fight. You gotta light 'em up.
My name is John Krotek, and I want to welcome you to Straight Outta Combat Radio, audio medicine by Green Zone Hero. We're here to honor the wisdom of America's most valuable asset for combat veterans. We're authentic, we're empowering, we're American.
Save us all before they burn it down.
Our guest for this episode of Straight Outta Combat Radio is Mr. Andrew Nelson, United States Army veteran, former paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne. I met Andrew 2 years ago. My gosh, time flies. 2 years ago at the Military Influencer Conference in Dallas. We had an opportunity to spend a couple of days out there, and we had a really great time. And then very briefly last year, we saw each other in Orlando at the Influencer Conference there. Andrew is a standout guy. He's got a heck of a legal resume. Not an illegal one, a legal one. We're going to talk about that. You know, he did get his law degree from the University of the Pacific, the McGeorge School of Law, but he hails from Washington, just south of Seattle. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, his upbringing and how he got to the 82nd Airborne, but then really what he's done since his time with the, you know, with the military and his message to our listeners. Anyhow, very thrilled and humbled and happy to finally get Andrew Nelson here on the show. Welcome to Straight Outta Combat Radio.
John, thanks a ton. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Well, we're glad to have you, man. You know, you're one of the guys I've been wanting to get for a while. You know, you're busy. You're always on the move. And as I guess most paratroopers are, you guys are always running around. But, you know, let's dig right in. Tell us about your childhood, high school, you know, and what your path was like to the 82nd Airborne.
Yeah, sure. You know, I have a story, I guess, that I assume a lot of other folks have. You know, my parents are still around. I'm 46 now. My parents live in the house I grew up in Renton, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle. It's kind of a small manufacturing town. It's Boeing centric, and I think the first B-17 kind of rolled off the flight line at that particular factory way back when. And so, you know, one sister, you know, went to the same high school my dad did, you know, if you can believe that. Even had one of his teacher that my dad had, you know, 30 years prior, believe it or not.
Wow, man. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So, you know, you know, my early childhood was really kind of just centered around this greater Seattle area. You know, I was one of those kids that didn't do a lot of vacations or vacation. My vacation got to be going to Eastern Washington to go hang out with the grandparents in the Tri-Cities out there. So
I gotta ask you though, man, did you get involved in the grunge scene?
Well, funny enough, that scene kind of came on right when I got in the Army. So
I got it.
I experienced it, but not in Seattle. I experienced it in North Carolina. So I remember this day, as a matter of fact, I kind of came back, I think, after basic training, and my sister, she's a couple years younger than me, had Nirvana's album. So she kind of turned me on to that, and then I became this, you know, miniature or minor hero when I came back to North Carolina. I said, "Hey guys, have you heard this new album yet? This new band?"
That's great.
So I got to introduce Nirvana, you know, to all the guys, you know. So so that's how I experienced it. But no, I just wasn't directly in the scene geographically.
Roger that. I got that. So did you have any military in your background?
Yeah, you know, I hate to say that I came from a military family because I wouldn't describe it as that. My dad, you know, had one tour in the Air Force. You know, spent 4 years. He was a missile man, believe it or not. So he spent time down in the silos down in New Mexico, I believe. His brother, was in the Army. He was a paratrooper with the 101st when they were still an Airborne Division. So the two guys, I guess, right above me had Army experience. Before that, not much at all. And then, now all of us, I guess the kids in my generation, my cousins and second cousins, all of us have been in one of the services. Most of us are kind of just one term and done. Few have stayed in for a few or more. I think I have one second cousin who's still in, is probably looking toward retirement. So, in that sense, a military family, but not like others. That's for sure.
That's pretty cool, but there always has been some kind of lineage. I've interviewed very few people that have had that haven't had anybody in their family, that have served the country. Was there, can you, thinking about before we get to the path to the 82nd, can you think of any, who was your hero? Who were your mentors growing up? And did you have that great love of country?
Yeah, I certainly did. Mentors, that's always been a tough one to answer. I mean, my dad and I were pretty tight and not tight at the same time. We would, it's not as if my dad hung around and did homework with me and that sort of thing. I was kind of on my own when it came to that, and I guess I was fine with it. But, he's the guy I would hang out in the shed with while he, sharpened his chainsaw blade and stuff like that. I have no idea. I'm just watching, like any other kid, and sorting nuts and bolts out in coffee cans and things like that. And, just learning what it's like to kind of just be outside and just the simple things. Now I think about it, talking to him about his childhood. For some odd reason, for years and years, when you're young and I didn't have a concept of the passage of time, my dad at some point must have told me that he, given our last name being Nelson, he kind of joked around and told me that he was once in his youth a Viking. And of course I believed it, right? Because I had no idea. I had no idea that it had to be, that would have been a long, long time ago. I'd talk to him, and my grandpa his dad just lived 3 houses down, so I spent a lot of time with him as a kid, and we lived on a riverfront property, so I'd learned to fish and things like that from my gramps growing up. So I'd kind of get stories about life from them, and certainly from a young age. My dad worked in construction. So he'd be the guy that'd get up at 4 a.m. and drive pretty far off for some project. So he'd go to bed at 8 o'clock. So my kind of nightly routine as a little kid was to jump in bed with Dad while he kind of watched a little bit of TV to wipe out. It'd always be old World War II flicks and things like that. So
right.
That was kind of, I just soaked that stuff up. And he'd wipe out, and then I'd just take off and go to bed. But it was very kind of. Seeing something military-centric was a regular part of the week, I guess, growing up. And always had me thinking about what I was going to do when I got to be that age.
That's pretty cool. So did you go directly into the service after high school, or what did you do?
I did. Growing up, I think I probably rotated, what my favorite service was of the week or the month or something like that. Wanted to be in the Navy at one point, because of Top Gun, and then I wanted to be in the Marines at one point because of, you name it, Full Metal Jacket or something. Rotated in the Army. Then, unfortunately, Iron Eagle didn't inspire me to go in the Air Force or anything like that, but I'm sure I wanted to be in the Air Force at some point. If I was just flying. I was in the Civil Air Patrol for a while, too, as a kid, so I was definitely thinking the aviation route at one point. But, when it came down to it, funny enough, I mean, this isn't a great story, but I think, the Army recruiter is the one that called first, and so, they called first, and they kind of did hey, what, there's a junior in high school. What are you doing for college? And I kind of just shrugged my shoulders. I don't know,
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, college is next, I think, and that's part of the plan, right? And neither of my parents went to college. My parents didn't have any experience with that either, and so they kind of shrugged their shoulders too. And I thought, oh, geez, how am I gonna do this? And on top of that, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I shouldn't say exactly. I wasn't remotely sure what I wanted to do. So, so I signed up in the delayed entry program as right at the end of my junior year, and that was in 1990. So right before, August, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. So I was, signed up for the Army, but then I got to sit around for a year and, hang out with the recruiters and, do PT with them, once every couple of weeks and stuff like that, and kind of watch what's going on. And then graduated high school, and I was in Fort Benning, Georgia, I want to say 10 days later, something like that, June 1991.
What was that like? Right from high school.
Tell you what, it was hot. Yeah, so I remember that day. I left Seattle. It must have been something like 6:30 a.m. and it was June, so you can get nice days. But this happened to be one of those really colder, rainy days in June. And I remember flying all the way across to Tennessee, switching to some kind of, short-range aircraft there, and then flying through thunderstorms, and then getting into, the Columbus Airport, I guess, right outside of Fort Benning there. It must have been 10 or 11 p.m. And I remember them opening the door, and I remember this hot air just coming in, and you could like feel it, like, just going around your body, and had a different smell and everything. I was like, I knew I was in a different place,
Right.
And then I remember them trucking us in and feeding us hamburgers or something at midnight or something like that. I said, man, this is okay. I'm in a different place now.
Yeah, I mean, and it is humid, and if you're getting at Benning, in June, are you kidding me? That's like, that place is a scorcher.
Yeah.
People don't realize it. There's not a lot of circulation of the air up there either.
No, so yeah, it was warm, that's for sure. Yeah.
So that's United States Army Infantry School. So you were 11 Bravo.
I was. I didn't know it at the time when I signed up. I got an airborne contract, so I signed up as 11X, which is just unassigned infantry. So didn't know exactly what kind of an infantryman I was going to be. And I don't remember. I suppose once we got down with basic, they kind of split us all up, and we were all, in that company, we were all either 11 Bravos or 11 Charlies. Back then, there were also 11 hotels, and there were 11 Mikes, but I don't think we had any of those in our company, as I recall.
So what was that training like for you? What, were you psyched for it? You talked about doing PT before you got there,
Yeah, look, growing up, I would have never described myself as an athlete. So, I managed, I got by. Did I ace the PT test? Nah. Did I come in at the bottom? Nah, no. Did I get through it comfortably? Yeah, pretty comfortably. So, was there anything easy about basic training? I'd like to say I look back on it and say, yeah, I can get through that. But heck, man, you don't know what the next day is going to hold for you. So, in real time, I'm sitting there going, yeah, this is quite a challenge, And then, it's not just 8 weeks of it. It's 8 weeks, and then, hey, guess what? You're gone for 3 days on leave, and come back, and or I guess your 3-day pass rather, and another 6 weeks of the same set of drill sergeants. So, and that's we're talking June, July, August. It was a good time, good rough time there in Fort Benning.
That was wasn't that kind of a wake up call though? You go to basic training, and then you get a few days off. And then you're right back in the mix with that advanced training. And it's like, holy cow, I thought I'd passed something and I'm going to get out of this. And then you're right back in it again. It's kind of
back in it, yeah. It's a blur at this point. I mean, I got my little yearbook or whatever from the time, which is mostly stock photos, and they chuck in a couple of like photos that they take along the way. But it's funny. I remember, I was looking at not even a month or two ago. I opened up a Foot Locker and found it, and I thought, God, I remember. I forget doing that. We did do mines that day, and then we did grenades, and we did X, Y, and Z. I just forgot a lot of that stuff. Because there's also, when you're there in basic at AIT, you're just trying to get through and make it to the next day, right, and then not get recycled.
Exactly. And that's the last thing you want. I remember one time I fell out on her. I didn't fall out. I stopped to tie my bootlace, and then if you drop out, it takes a little bit more to get back. And I was just about back to the formation. And they threw me in the back of a deuce and a half, and I never did that again. If my boot ever came unlaced, I just went with it. It was not fun what they made us do. So is there anything, so tell, is there anything that stands out, from your basic training or your advanced training that you went, where you think about where something just transcended and you go, this is really kind of cool, or this is not cool. Anything that stands out?
Well, I remember, I was really in awe of the whole thing. I mean, I don't want to say I lived a sheltered life, but in a way I did. Like I told you earlier, I didn't, really get out of Washington much, didn't really see even a lot of the state, and I didn't even think I even saw the ocean, if you can believe that. Living in a coastal state, I didn't see I met us in Puget Sound in Seattle, but I didn't see the actual coast until I was probably 17, So I was just in awe of the whole thing about how big of I was just part of this much bigger kind of operation that, just extended everywhere, and I didn't know where the boundaries and the ends of it were, but I was just part of this big machine. So I was, really, like I said, I was in awe of the whole thing, and, just, really dug being a part of this thing. I really expected, didn't have a lot of expectations, but I had some expectations I was going to have some big adventures like I've never seen, which was true. I had, so I was excited
What was
and happy to be done with it.
Yeah. What was airborne school like?
Airborne school was a bit of a blur, and the funny thing is, if you got a couple seconds here on this, once I finished AIT, that was a big drawdown, right? This was post Gulf War, so they started to draw down the Army quite a bit, and basic training, they had these starships, they used to call them, at Fort Benning, and they started to shut down a few of the basic training units, and ours was one of them. It was the last rotation, so we finished AIT, graduate, and I think the great majority of our company were National Guardsmen or reservists. So they all took off to go back to wherever state they were from. And the remainder of us, and I'm guessing was maybe 15, 20 of us, I don't recall, get ready to go to airborne school because we're all regular Army. But and there's a rotation that starts every week because I think they always had every 3 weeks they always had, or every week they had a new rotation. They had 3 companies, I think. So we're getting ready to go. Figured, okay, we're going to go into the next rotation, and somebody comes out and says, "Hey, a bunch of West Point cadets are coming down. They're getting these slots, so you guys have to wait for the next rotation." Okay,
Yeah.
But while you're waiting, we have to shut down this whole battalion. So start cleaning. So we're there for another 2 or 3 weeks, just 20 of us, getting babysat by some reserve drill sergeants and just cleaning up the kitchen and the mess hall, just cleaning. So that was my first taste of real deep cleaning. Of course, I've been cleaning the whole time you're in basic and AIT as well, but this is real cleaning. And so I was happy to get through that. Maybe that was the toughest part, and I don't even remember it. But once we got to airborne school 3 weeks later, that was a blast. I mean, all of a sudden we kind of felt like we were actually in the Army, right? It's not basic, it's not AIT. We're mixing it with other people of all kinds of, actually all services are there. We have people from different countries, in the class even. And, you're talking to sergeants all of a sudden, you're talking to them kind of regular, like, "Hey, sergeant, from where are you from? What's going on? Why are you here in airborne school?" Not everything's drill sergeant, Of course, it takes you about 3 weeks still to stop saying drill sergeant, putting drill in front of every time. But I loved it. I mean, airborne school is quick. I mean, 3 weeks goes really fast, of course. And then that last week, that jump week, where they say you're going to do 5 jumps in 5 days, ends up being 1 jump, and then the rest kind of come in the next couple of days, and you get done with it. But that was a blast. I mean, I was really thrilled I did it. I was one of those dorks who actually literally screamed airborne when I jumped out the first time, and actually the chute opened. Then karma got me because then when I hit the ground, I landed right in a pile or a fire ant hill, and so I had some
karma, man,
after that one.
They were going to teach this paratrooper. That's exactly what they were thinking. But
yeah.
So it's okay. So did anybody come to your graduation? Did your parents come?
For airborne school, yeah, my mama came down. She flew down, believe it or not, with my sister, and my mom pinned on my wings and all that. And then we drove to Atlanta, and then I think from there I had leave, and I flew back with my mom to Seattle for a week or two before I, then headed out to Fort Bragg for my duty station.
What was that like? So then, that must have been. How'd you feel?
Oh boy, at what point here?
Right when your mom pinned your wings on, how'd you feel?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I knew I was kind of, I've been in this kind of different environment for so long, and one thing I didn't mention, and I don't tell many people this, but I'll tell you, after I got to, Beatty got to the entrance, kind of the receiving spot there at Fort Benning.
Right.
A couple days later, after they take your clothes, they take all your personal items, they take your hair. I had culture shock. I was sitting there. I remember one time just kind of shaking a little bit. Where am I, kind of thing. That quickly passed, but here I was. Then my mom and I know I'm going back home at least for a little while, but you feel accomplished, right? And you're like, okay, I got past this, and I'm gonna go to my regular duty station, but I get to go home and be where I was 4 months ago for a little while and spend time with the family again.
That's pretty cool. You know what?
Great feeling, but it's limited. It's limited at the same time. It's not going to last very long.
That's true. One thing that you mentioned that was kind of interesting. You mentioned the National Guard and the Army Reservists, and I remember my own personal story. Like when we got ready to go, when AIT was done, and we were getting our orders, it kind of freaked me out. 75% of our platoon, or actually our company, we're all going back home, and I'm like, man, I could have signed up to go back home. It was kind of
Right. Yeah.
It was kind of interesting, but I'm not saying that I didn't want to stay, but that's funny when you mentioned that because it was like a shock to me. I thought everybody was going somewhere like I was. It was weird.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to be kind of in the minority, so to speak. I thought there'd be maybe some reservists and National Guardsmen. It was just kind of peculiar to me that very few of us were regular Army.
Yeah, it was like everybody was leaving, man. It was kind of crazy. But so tell us about. So you spent your whole time at Bragg, or did you guys get moved around, or how'd that go down?
No, I spent my whole time at Bragg. Certainly, did some missions and that sort of thing in different places across the U.S. and went down to Panama for a bit. But I was stationed at Bragg the whole time.
Tell us about the 82nd Airborne.
I can tell you about the early '90s 82nd Airborne. How about that?
Okay,
yeah. So I don't know how big Fort Bragg is these days. I know it was one of the bigger bases back then. I think Fort Hood might have been bigger. I'm not sure. But good place, big place. And I'll tell you what, it was, I think there were 40,000 soldiers at the time on Fort Bragg. Only 15,000 roughly, were 82nd. So there was a lot of soldiers on that base for sure. But, I don't have any other, units to really compare it to, since I didn't serve in any others, but, we were a driven set of knuckleheads, I have to say, of course, 3 years, like a lot of other young guys, I suppose, but I was proud to serve in that unit. We certainly, we don't really have anybody to kind of like show off to other than ourselves, so you don't really get any satisfaction from that. But, we were a driven unit that, we at least like to think that we were, cutting edge, and did a lot of really cool stuff, when I was in that unit, stuff that I wanted to do. And one thing I didn't mention earlier, when I said, that I joined the Army because they gave me a call, kind of first is kind of how it went down. There was a whole process of what do you want to do as well, right? What do you want to do when you're in the Army? Because I scored well in the ASVAB and I pretty much had my choice of whatever I wanted to do. But I remember telling the recruiter specifically, I said, look, I'm going to be in here. I'm only going to be here for 3 years. So if I'm going to be in the Army, this whole interpreter thing sounds really cool. I'd love to go to language school, but I want to do, finger quotes, Army stuff. I want to blow stuff up. I want to jump out of planes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I signed up to do. That's why I went, 11 series. And so at Fort Bragg, I got to do exactly that. Jump, do missions, do live fires, fire AT-4s, all that stuff, loud stuff. And luckily I wore my earplugs, I think, most of the time, so I think I came out okay.
Was there any one instance, or is there anything that you went through in your training or your permanent duty station that stands out in your mind? This is kind of, that made you feel more patriotic or just, made you really feel like you were doing something fantastic? Or a lesson that you may have seen, maybe something that you saw that goes, holy cow, that really made an impact on me.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, oddly enough, I'm sure it's the same with any unit. You're going to go through rotations, either training or you're kind of on ready status, or you might be doing kind of menial things like, cutting grass and stuff like that. So I remember, one time we had, one or two times we had, I don't know if we called it burial duty or funeral duty or whatever. So, here we are, our job is infantry, so we're out in the field a lot doing this and that. And next thing you know, it's like, well, now you guys, for the next 6 weeks, you guys are going to learn how to do 21-gun salute. You're going to learn how to carry caskets. And if anybody just so happens to die in the state of North Carolina or whatever, and they request a military funeral, you guys are going to be the ones doing it. Okay. And sure enough, we did 2 or 3 of them during our rotation, and, that's the chance for us to kind of get out and, in the field of a different nature, which is kind of in the, I don't remember where we went in North Carolina, but went someplace in some, town that's not a military town and put on a good ceremony for somebody else that served. And that was a great feeling. That was really wonderful.
That's pretty cool. So, okay, so you spent your entire time at Bragg. Were you ever? What do you know about the 502nd Parachute Regiment?
The 502nd?
Yeah.
Gosh, the 502nd. Those guys are. I don't know, but I'm guessing that those guys are part of the 101st. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know. I thought when we were in Dallas, I thought we had talked about the 502nd, I'm not, I don't know. I'm not an airborne guy. I'm a 54.
Well,
yeah, I'm a chemical guy, but yeah. I
always forget. They have so in the 82nd, we had 3 brigades. So we had the 504, and the 505 is what I was in, and then we had the 325, and the 325 was a legacy kind of regiment from World War I when it was the 82nd Infantry Division.
Right.
And then I know the 101st, I believe, of course, has the 506, right? I mean, of course, Band of Brothers and all that, right?
Right.
Easy Company, the 506. And I think they have another one of the, not the 325, maybe they have the 324, 326. I'm not sure exactly. And then I thought they may have the 502. And then there's the training battalion, the training regiment rather, down at Fort Benning was the 507th, if I recall. So I don't know where the heck they have the others scattered. So the 502, I'm not sure. Maybe if there's a 101st person listening, maybe they'll know.
Yeah, we need to figure that out. But so you did all these missions, you served your country, you were airborne soldier, and then you transitioned out. Did you have any idea what you were going to do when you got out?
Only in the general sense, which is I knew what I was doing before I went in the Army. So I had a goal, part of the goal was, they sold me with the college fund, right? Hey, there's the GI Bill plus, since you're in a particular kind of MOS, you can get the Army college fund too. I'm like, oh, really? Wow. Okay, so serve 3 years, you can do 2, 3, 4. If you do 3 years, you get $24,500, with the GI Bill included. Like, wow, okay, that sounds great. So I'm going to college when I get done, likely going to University of Washington, since that's kind of a legacy from the family. My dad did not go to college, but his dad did, and then my uncle went there as well. So I was destined to go there. So I kind of knew generally what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was going to study. I kind of developed my interest a bit in the Army, and I kind of realized, hey, the things that really draw me are, history. I read history books, and I don't like politics, but political science interests me, and these are things that draw me. So those are things I might study. And so I get out and that's my goal. I mean, it's a generalized goal. Didn't know what I was going to do, but that was the goal. I knew I had, a next phase, and the next phase was to get to college, figure out what I'm going to do in college, but get through it. And so that was the plan. So after I ETS'd in September of '94, I drove cross country, and I think I was starting school, and it must have been within a week or something like that. And I was off to the races, and just taking kind of generalized courses and figuring out what I liked, figuring out what drew me, and thought I was going to be a history professor at one point and got a teaching credential and that sort of thing, and still didn't know what I wanted to do. And then it must have been probably my junior year in college where I finally met somebody else who said they wanted to be an attorney, an environmental attorney, and I had no idea what that was. Didn't really know what, other than knowing in general what a lawyer was, didn't really know what that entailed. And then I started looking at it more and more and kind of realized, or at least concluded, that a bachelor's degree in poli-sci and history, I had a double major, was probably didn't, it wasn't an endpoint. You had to do something else. And I loved academia, but it wasn't drawing me enough to kind of go down that route. So I kind of, by hook or crook, figured out that a lot of people go to law school next. And so that's kind of what went into the decision was, do the law school next, and then opportunities will open up. I don't know what they're going to be. Might be in the government sector. That's where I kind of thought I might go. And so I kind of went to, you mentioned earlier, I went to McGeorge, which is University of the Pacific.
That's in Stockton. Is that Stockton, California?
The main campus is in Stockton.
Yeah.
The law school, though, is in Sacramento. So I figured, well, I'll go to Sacramento. I'll go to the biggest government in the country other than D.C. That'll be primed for some kind of, work or internship or whatever in government. And then I quickly abandoned that plan as soon as I went through about a semester and lost interest.
I hear you. So, but was it hard? Was it a tough transition, or you just kind of went with the flow? It sounds like. Did you have any? I mean, it doesn't sound like you had too many problems. It sounded like you just kind of went with the flow and things seemed to work out.
Yeah, and I've been asked this before, and I've thought about it a lot. I got out of the Army. I mean, I've told people before. I said, look, we're in the Army. But, we're not wearing uniform 24 hours a day. We get off and, we try to be, kind of shadows of our former selves and our evolving selves. And, we were all civilians at one point. So, that's us, in the evening, that's us on the weekend. And certainly, there's a lot that's layered on top, from the Army for sure. But when I got out, I drove back and, there's some transition, but I didn't feel like I was all of a sudden in a foreign land. That kind of thing. And what I've told people before, if people have asked, I said, I think, if anything that, I had to kind of shed, so to speak, was kind of my strict adherence to rules and that sort of thing. It's like I had to soften up a little bit, I guess. And just realize that not everything goes by the book and everything is supposed to, and I don't even know why I would think that, because it's not as if everything in the military went by the book either. but at least you have this ideal of a very strict square framework. So I had to shed that a little bit. And, I had a part-time job when I started college, and, a couple months in, I almost got myself fired one time, because I was just, I don't know what I was doing. I think I was complaining about somebody else because they weren't doing something, and I couldn't believe that they weren't following the rules, that sort of thing. I didn't get myself in trouble. Other than that, it was not that hard of a transition for me. I transitioned into school life, so to speak, and I was really dedicated to just absorbing it all. I was kind of moldable, and I took it as it came, and I applied myself and focused and did well.
I like the way, Andrew, I tell you, I like the way, it's the first time I've interviewed anybody that said that about lightening up. And, it's true. It's, you come out of the service, and you have been under a strict set of rules, and which aren't always followed all the time, but you come out and you just have a different perspective. And you know what, man, I'm glad you said that, because if you come out, and this, for anybody listening, if you come out and you think the civilian world is going to operate like the military world, they're sadly mistaken, because it isn't. That's not to say that we can't be a major influence, as we well know. But I think I like that. That's almost a bit of advice, lighten up a little bit.
Yeah. And it's even, I don't know if it's a natural instinct or if it's a learned behavior, but we could benefit for sure. So. Yeah. I want to say I did. And it might, and, maybe it was, the fact that I was also, I was kind of out, do some part-time work, and then I kind of got in college life, so to speak, and everybody there is, I'm the old guy at 21, and everybody else is 18 starting off, at least the folks that I'm starting off with as freshmen. And you're certainly around a lot of people who are pretty carefree. So, it's easy for them to kind of rub off on you, I guess, in that scenario. If I wasn't in that kind of situation, I don't know, maybe I would have been a little more stilted for a little bit longer.
Yeah. So tell us what you're doing now.
Well, now I'm a partner at a law firm here in Costa Mesa, California, which is dead center in Orange County in Southern California. I've been doing this sort of thing since 2001, so I guess that's just shy of 18 years. I guess in November is when it'll be my full 18 years I've been practicing. I'm a civil litigator, so I'm a civil lawyer. I don't do any criminal work, that sort of thing, but most of what I do involves businesses, and it's been the same since day one. Variety of issues, as in businesses run into a lot of different things. If you can imagine it, business can run into it. So, mostly work with kind of startup businesses to medium-sized businesses, and I love it.
That's
a
great.
lot of fun.
Well, I know that can you think of any case or a case or two that you, that's been settled that you're very proud of?
In general, some years ago, I at my last firm that I was at, we represented a lot of Southern California lifestyle brands, so a lot of surf skate brands, and I really like doing a lot of work for those folks. So it was a little bit clunky here and there, because they kind of had the bro mentality, that sort of thing from the coast and all that. But they had really valuable intellectual property to protect. They had brands that got counterfeited a lot. They had a lot of artwork that used to get infringed upon, the copyrights in those. So I really love being able to kind of help them secure that sort of thing. Now, I guess if you want to point to one, I had an interesting one time. It was for Billabong, and they had this piece of artwork. It was very clever. It was a graphic T-shirt, and it was like a collage. If you looked really close, it was just a collage of a lot of kind of coastal or images, waves and things like that. But it was arranged in such a way that if you were at a distance, it would look like a skull. And then they sold that in a lot of different doors. And one of the doors they sold it at was Disneyland. And sometime later, a shirt came out that looked almost the same, and it was the same kind of collage. It was a Pirates of the Caribbean themed graphic, and it was the very same kind of appearance. It was this kind of mosaic or collage of all these small images with Jack Sparrow and all that. But when you looked up, but it was even that right there was kind of an infringement of copyright. So it was curious to kind of deal with the Disney folks in resolving that kind of thing, because you could be right all day, but it's economic power has some influence or something to say about how these things get resolved. Now, one other I'll tell you about really quick, which is, I don't know if I'm necessarily proud about it, but it was just, just to kind of share some of the lunacy that we may deal with. I mean, a lot of people think and would, have this view of lawyers as, at least one stereotype. There are many, but one is that they're all kind of, four corners and stilted and wear elbow patches and all that sort of thing. I had a case. I was probably a second or third year attorney. I was at this law firm. Old school law firm. I mean, it literally had a library and everything. A library, and even had a librarian, in the law firm. And so we got this case transferred to us, and I was doing this. I've always been doing this intellectual property work. So copyright and trademark stuff I love to do, trade secrets, that kind of thing. And this case got us moved from some other attorneys to us, and so there's a lot of things for me to read already. This case involved two guys in Northern California, both who own porta potty companies. Okay. And it was the most gnarly knockdown, drag out fight you could ever imagine. It was just a business to business fight over, trademarks and images. And one guy claiming that, he's had the exclusive rights to have, call it yellow porta potties and claims of, vandalism, and all this sort of thing. And I thought, how ridiculous is this? I mean, I'm sitting in this library laughing. I'm laughing because I'm reading testimony that's already been taken, that kind of thing. And some of the, shall I call it just, salt of the earth answers that some guys are given to questions and things like that under oath. It was just funny stuff. I mean, it's very serious, but at the same time, you're looking at some of the stuff going, what are people really fighting about here? So, anytime though, look, I'm here to really help people resolve problems. That's the purpose. So sometimes the problems are nutty. I mean, they're nutty, but, there's a lot of satisfaction that comes out in helping people, resolve their problems. Not as if I don't have enough of my own. So I don't know what I was thinking when I decided to go down this path.
No, I heard what you're saying. So yeah, that's crazy, and it does give you a different perspective. Let me ask you this. So what is, there's a couple more questions here. What does freedom mean to you?
Yeah, I've thought about that one before, and I don't know if I ever have a great answer for it. But, I guess I want to be simple, John. Freedom means to me is really worrying or thinking very seldom about whether I can do something. I put this in perspective sometimes. I think about, I try to put myself in the shoes of other folks in other parts of the world, thinking, I don't even know if I can imagine what their experience is, right? Because I only have my own here. And, our own is we bitch and moan about, policies are coming up and this is going to take away our freedom and our liberty and that sort of thing. And I think, man, wow, we're having this discussion, but man, this isn't even a discussion someplace else. And like, how fortunate are we all to be here? Because we got a whole heck of a lot of freedom and liberty and, just not being impinged, right? Certainly we live in a world of rules and laws, so it's not exactly true, right? We're surrounded by rules and things that tell us what we can and can't do. But, from our point of reference, it's not a whole heck of a lot. I mean, most of life, I feel if I want to do something, I can do it, and I can do it unabated. And so it's, I feel privileged to enjoy what I call freedom.
That's great, because and sometimes we do take things for granted. There are a lot of different perspectives on exactly what it means, but pretty great perspective you have there. Let me ask you this. So what do you want the civilian world to know, based on your experiences with the service and, your own transition? What do you want them to know about veterans?
Well, What I'd like folks to think, or at least to conclude, is veterans aren't, and maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I am. Anybody can tell me I'm wrong here. We're not the other, so to speak. We're not the other. We're not different. We are. We were all civilians at one point. And if you're a veteran, you've returned to the civilian world, so to speak. But I guess I even hate saying civilian world because that makes it sound like the other. But veterans, we're all alike in large part. But veterans do bring out what I'd like civilians to realize is veterans bring some just great experiences that most civilians only see on TV, or can't even really imagine. I feel really honored to have, really changed my worldview, I guess, at 21. I told you, growing up, I didn't get out of state much at all, or really out of town much at all. And in 3 years, I did so much, Panama to every corner of the country. I did so much in those 3 years. So you just bring a lot of experiences that just will not see from other folks. And you bring I think in veterans across the board, you see a hunger, I think. I see it from other folks I run into. You just see a hunger that you won't see from a lot of other people. You will see it from a lot of civilians as well, but you will see that, I think, from the vast majority of veterans, and especially now. What I've seen the last couple of years since I've kind of really reconnected with the veteran community, I see drive like I don't see in any other sector.
No, those are some great points, and I have to agree with you. Most, not all, I think you're right, not all, but most veterans and most people that have served in the military, I would say, have a certain motivation that you don't generally find with the civilians. Doesn't mean we're better or worse or whatnot, but it is something that's definitely noticeable. Something we talked about early on that, that could be a huge benefit, to anybody that's considering, having a veteran work for them. If there's a young transitioning, or not even a young transitioning soldier or Marine or Air Force or Navy personnel out there, what kind of advice can you give to them about the transition?
I'd say be open. I don't want to say actively try to, shed, everything you have, and, you have to somehow, shed your identity to become something else. But let things come to you. That's probably what I could have learned, and early on. Like I said, I almost got canned one time at my part-time job, for being a little too stilted. Just try to, just let the world come to you a little bit. Experience it and be moldable, and be open to accepting influence. Do that. That's one. And two, think big. I didn't really have this kind of drilled into me until probably in the last 3 or 4 years, is to think big. Think big. I think I was always kind of constricted by limiting beliefs throughout maybe not so much in college. Once I got kind of actually into the working world, I just for many years, I always thought, gosh, there's so many people around me that are just way smarter than me, and and I wish I wouldn't have thought that way. Somebody would have been saying, think bigger. You need to think bigger. Think big. I've really adopted that philosophy the last couple of years, and it's really paid off. Really paid off. So I say early on, think big. Think big. It'll give you something to aim at.
Definitely some good advice. So I know that you're, you've been part of the Military Influencer Conference, and I know you've actually had some workshops there. Are you planning on giving one in D.C. At the next one?
I put in a submission for it. I won't expect that it's necessarily going to get accepted. I know they get so many fantastic submissions. If I do get accepted again, I love it, and I will give the best breakout I can. But there's so many people that want to do it, and heck, I'd love to go attend some more myself. So if I get to, great. If not, I'll apply again.
Yeah, that sounds great. So how can people get a hold of you, Andrew, especially somebody on the West Coast that may have a question about trademarks or, copyright infringement, or startup, legal stuff? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Well, my email address is pretty simple. It's anelson, as in Andy Nelson, anelson at fortislaw.com. That's FORTISLAW. So email is always great. My number here is 949-397-2964. It's my direct line there. And then, as the email suggests, our website's fortislaw.com. So easy to find.
That's cool, man. Well, I got to tell you, it's been enjoyable to have you on the show finally, and appreciate you as a person. You know, I'm looking forward to if I make it up to DC, but I know we'll see each other somewhere. We're kind of running in the same circles, but you know,
absolutely.
Mr. Andrew Nelson of Fortis Law, and he's out there in Costa Mesa, California, doing some great things for people in business and protecting people's rights. I appreciate you, Andrew, and thank you for being on Straight Outta Combat Radio.
John, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you having me on.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Straight Outta Combat Radio, audio medicine from Green Zone Hero. If you liked what you heard, then tell others about us. Like us and download us. And please remember, freedom is not free, and combat veterans are vital assets. They're not broken.